Everybody has memorable moments in their life. Maybe you won a championship with a sports team or accomplished a long-term goal. Most people have their own unique story about their greatest accomplishment. But the one thing that people can relate to is the feeling that comes from it. If you want something meaningful to be accomplished, you have to work for it. You have to overcome the obstacles that get you to your goal, and you have to know that these obstacles are temporary. My story is about the time I got my black belt in karate. It had been 5 years since I started karate. I came to karate class religiously for 2 days a week and 90 minutes each day of moderately intense training. As a result, I finally rose up to the rank of red belt, which was the rank right before black belt. My karate instructor helped get me to the point and was always pushing me and the other students to do better. He was strict, tough, but also encouraging. I know I had worked hard to get to red belt, and I knew from the start that I wanted to become a black belt, but I had no idea how difficult it was going to get in the 1 year of preparation for my black belt test. From the time I got my red belt, I continued to come to karate with the same morale I always had. I was excited to learn the new technique I would need and would have to practice for the next year to perform for my black belt test. The techniques I learned were hard to get the hang of, and I soon learned that the black belt test required things that I had never been required to do before. Besides the new advanced karate forms I would have to perform, I was also required to learn 20 different Korean terminology phrases and to be able to translate it into certain karate moves. In addition, I was required to break 2 half-inch solid wood boards with a jump spinning back kick. Keeping in mind that I had to learn all this material, know it, and then perform it with 0 errors was difficult to me. My karate instructor pushed me to have all the material down to perfection. I really hit a roadblock in my path to becoming a black belt when I kept coming into class and getting criticized on every mistake I had by black belts and my karate instructor. It frustrated me so much to the point where I wanted to stop coming to karate. I started 8th grade at that time, and the workloads and responsibilities I had combined with other extracurricular activities made me overwhelmed when I had to deal with the stress of black belt preparation in karate. About 6 months after getting my red belt, I started only going to karate 1 day a week and started to have a more sluggish attitude. The pressure of what it took to become a black belt was finally getting to me, and around that point was when I started contemplating quitting karate. But fortunately for me, my parents saw what was going on. One day, I sat down to talk to them, and they said how invested I was in karate, and that it would be a shame to quit now. The conversation I had with my parents that one day might not have been the most inspiring, but the fact that someone looked out for me in one of my lowest moments was inspiring. When I had my next karate class, I went to talk to my instructor to explain my situation. My karate instructor might be strict, but he was understanding, and he recommended to me that I start coming into extra classes for more practice. After this conversation I had with my instructor, I didn't immediately start going to extra classes, but I returned to my normal schedule of coming 2 classes per week. It was now 3 months before I was supposed to take my test for black belt, and I knew realistically that I was not going to test for black belt that winter, but I knew with a little bit more time that I could test for it in the spring of that next year. So I had a plan, and I was on track to perfect my technique for the spring black belt test. I knew that I wanted that black belt, and I knew that I should get it before going into high school that next year. Later, I had worked hard the next 8 months. I went to extra classes and was perfecting my technique in everything I learned. I made sure my karate forms were error-free, that my Korean karate terminology was engraved in my brain, and kept practicing my jump spinning back kick, which I would need to perform in order to break 2 half-inch thick solid wood boards. I knew that I was sufficiently ready to test for black belt, and I would know concretely after taking a practice test. In my practice test, I performed well, but I was unable to break the wooden boards with my breaking kick, something that I would have to do if I wanted to pass the test. My karate instructor told me that I was close to breaking the boards, but that I needed to make a small adjustment if I wanted to break the boards during testing. After noting all of his advice, it was soon time to take my test for real. Finally, the time came as I entered the gymnasium where I would be taking my test. At that time, it felt like I was going to throw up because of all the high-ranking black belts, karate instructors, and other officials from my karate's greater association who were there at the testing. 30 of us, red belts, lined up, about to take the test for black belt in front of a large panel of karate masters. My instructor was just one of the many that sat at the table. The extremely unpleasant feeling I had when I entered the building quickly subsided when we started the test. The time was mine. I performed all the things I had been practicing with all my effort. I soon realized that it was not just a test of physical strength and endurance, but also psychological strength and endurance. After one sweat-drenched hour of a grueling test, it was my time to finally perform my last part of the test, my brake kick. The feeling I had when I entered the building suddenly came back. I only had 3 attempts to break 2 half-inch solid wood boards with my jump spinning back kick. On my first attempt, I felt unbalanced and I almost missed the board completely. I took a deep breath, and on my second kick I had good form, but it was not enough to break both the boards. Then I took a look over to my family, who had been very supportive of me. Then my karate instructor, who gave me a look of encouragement. Then, suddenly, time felt slow. Everything was silent, and my ears started ringing. I looked at the 2 half-inch thick solid wood boards once more and prepared for my last kick. In an instant, single second, I heard the sound of wood boards breaking as I landed after taking my kick. I had broken the boards. 3 months later, I had finally waited for the moment to know if I was going to be promoted to black belt or if I had failed the test. My karate instructor called me into his office area. That is where I blatantly received one of the greatest pieces of news in my life. I had passed the test. That was truly one of the greatest moments in my life, and I just wanted to stay in the moment then and there. In conclusion, the most important thing I learned from this accomplishment is that you should not let small things get in your way of accomplishing something big. Hardships are temporary, but accomplishments last forever.